I didn't mean to buy the doll. It was sitting in the dusty corner of a thrift store, half buried under a pile of old picture frames and chipped lamps. Its face was porcelain, with vacant, glassy blue eyes, and its delicate fingers were folded neatly in its lap. A small, thin crack ran down its cheek, almost like a scar from being dropped once and then forgiven. The tag, faded and yellowed, read $3. I almost laughed at the price, but something about its stare made me hesitate. The cashier, an older woman with sharp, knowing eyes, paused as she scanned it. "You sure about this one?" she asked, her voice low. I just shrugged. "Yeah." "Why?" She simply shook her head. "Just don't keep it where you pray." I laughed it off, thinking she was just some eccentric old lady. "Sure thing," I said. That was my first mistake. That night, I placed the doll on a rocking chair in my bedroom. Its painted eyes seemed to follow me as I moved around the room, getting ready for bed. I rolled my own eyes and told myself I was just being paranoid. Before climbing under the covers, I knelt beside my mattress and said a quiet prayer, a simple habit I'd kept since childhood. Just a few words, asking for guidance, for peace. Nothing heavy. The moment I finished, I heard it. A soft, deliberate clicking sound, like tiny porcelain feet on a wooden floor. I froze. My heart started pounding in my chest. The doll was standing. It had been sitting just moments ago. Now, its little porcelain feet were flat on the floorboards. Its head was tilted down at an impossible, unnatural angle, staring right at me. I scrambled up, heart hammering against my ribs, and snatched it up. I set it firmly back in the chair, pushing it down into the cushion. It stayed put. My hands were shaking. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself it must have been a trick of the light, or my tired mind playing games. But then, to prove myself right, I knelt again. I closed my eyes. I whispered the same prayer. The clicking was louder this time, sharper. I forced my eyes open. The doll was closer. Not by much, just a few inches. But it hadn't fallen. The chair hadn't moved. Something cold and heavy slid down my spine. I tried to stop, my words catching in my throat. I didn't finish the prayer. I forced myself to open my eyes fully. The doll was still there, watching, waiting. The next day, I was determined to get it out of my sight. I took the doll and shoved it deep into my closet, locking it behind layers of jackets and old coats. Problem solved, I thought. But that night, as I tried to sleep, I felt a strange presence in the room, a suffocating stillness. I wasn't sleeping, but I wasn't fully awake either, caught in that strange limbo state. And then I felt it. Something moved on the bed. My eyes snapped open. The doll was sitting at the edge of my mattress, right by my feet. Its hands were no longer folded peacefully in its lap. They were clasped together in front of it, mimicking my own posture when I prayed. A scream caught in my throat. I threw myself out of bed, grabbed the doll, and stuffed it back into the closet, slamming the door shut. It didn't matter. That night, I dreamed of hands folding in prayer in my hands, and yet, not mine. I could feel them trembling, moving on their own, guided by something else. Over the next few days, I decided to test it, like some twisted experiment. I placed the doll on the far side of the room, on top of a bookshelf. I sat on my bed. I folded my hands. I bowed my head. The moment my eyes closed, I heard it. A scraping sound across the floorboards, dragging. I opened my eyes. Halfway across the room, the doll stood upright, its little legs stiff. Its head was tilted slightly, as if it was studying me. I didn't finish the prayer. I couldn't. The very thought of it felt like poison now. I finally broke down and called my mother. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking so much I could barely hold the phone. I think the doll is cursed." She was quiet on the other end for a long time. "You need to get rid of it," she said finally, her tone flat and serious. "I tried," I said, my voice cracking. "I threw it away once, in the dumpster outside, but it came back." She didn't answer right away. Then she asked, "Did you pray before you did?" I hadn't. The thought hadn't even crossed my mind. "You can't pray near it," she said slowly, each word heavy. "Prayer is an invitation." "For what?" I asked, my blood running cold. "For whatever is listening." That night, I tried something different. I didn't pray. I lay in bed, my eyes wide open, watching the doll from across the room. I stared at it for hours. Nothing happened. For a moment, a wave of relief washed over me. I thought maybe the worst was over. Then I noticed its hands. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they moved, unfolded, then folded again, clasped tightly. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. My body wouldn't move. I was paralyzed. The doll moved closer, step by tiny, scraping step. Its porcelain face, which I once thought was serene, began to crack slightly, the tiny fissures forming a grotesque, widening smile. "You called me back," it whispered. It wasn't a sound, more like a thought planted directly inside my head. I realized then, it didn't need me to pray aloud. It only needed me to think it. The desire to pray, the silent plea for help, was enough. I knew I couldn't live like this. The next day, I wrapped the doll in an old, thick cloth, drove it to a church across town, and left it on the stone steps, hoping someone else would find it and break the cycle. That night, back in my apartment, I prayed harder than I had in years. I prayed for protection, for forgiveness, for safety, for this nightmare to finally end. I closed my eyes, exhausted. I felt my hands fold naturally, a familiar comfort. And then, a whisper, right at my ear. "You cannot leave it behind." I opened my eyes. The doll stood at the foot of my bed. Its porcelain smile was wider now, a jagged crack splitting its face from cheek to cheek. Its hands unfolded, and as they did, mine were forced to move with them, into the posture of prayer. I tried to struggle, to pull my hands apart, but I couldn't. My body was no longer my own. It obeyed the doll. "Every prayer opens a door," it said, its voice layered and cold, echoing in my mind. "You just never asked who was answering." And then, the lights went out. I woke up on the floor the next morning. Sunlight was spilling across the room, warm and bright, a stark contrast to the cold terror of the night. The doll was gone. I searched every corner of my apartment, but I never found it again. I stopped praying, stopped folding my hands. I stopped closing my eyes at night until I absolutely couldn't keep them open anymore. But sometimes, when I'm half asleep, in that quiet space between worlds, I feel my hands begin to move on their own. And then I hear it, the faint sound of porcelain scraping on wood. Getting closer, closer, just waiting for me to pray again. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.